China will be in the best three test playing nations within 5 years once they start playing cricket. So why do you think Bangladesh has not been able to scale up like the Sri Lanka did in the 90s? We haven't really fully processed what an incredible thing that Sri Lanka did. India weren't really a top-level international team until really the 60s. And yet they start playing in the 30s. New Zealand start playing Test cricket in the 1930s. They win their first Test series 39 years later. Right?
Yeah.
When South Africa first started playing Test cricket, literally England was sending over blokes they found in the pub. Right? There are people who beat South Africa on that first Test series, Megha, who had never played first-class cricket before or after that series. Right? We see one good success team of a team getting really quick. And the truth is that Sri Lanka were probably really good for a long time and just weren't pushed ahead. My guess is that Sri Lanka probably start to get really good. And this is, they had some good players in the 30s as well. But they probably start to get really decent around the 50s and 60s. But unfortunately, so much so, when they got in the World Cup in 1975, Sri Lanka, right? It's such a weird story. Denmark and I think Canada, but it was Denmark and someone else. Might have been Denmark and Holland. Were so upset that Sri Lanka was ahead of them because they were just convinced they were better teams than Sri Lanka, right? No one had seen Sri Lanka. They hadn't seen this team play, right? And by 1979, Sri Lanka beat India in a World Cup, right? Yeah. Which basically gets them Test status. So you have some teams who are held back too late, and then you have teams like New Zealand who are nowhere near. Argentina were a better team in the 1930s than New Zealand. Argentina should have been a Test-playing nation at the same time that New Zealand were, right? South Africa, America were probably a better team at that stage than South Africa were, right? And so you get some teams who get it for many varied reasons, and you get other teams who don't. Like the Netherlands. Look at the Netherlands bowling lineup. Like, who would you rather face in a Test match? Like Ireland's bowling lineup or the Netherlands bowling lineup? I think I'd pick Ireland, right? Ireland, good team in other ways, but I think I'd rather not face a full-strength Dutch Test bowling lineup on a fruity wicket with a little bit of grass on it. Good luck. That's a really good attack, right? And so you look at a one-off of Bangladesh and you say, whoa, they should be better by now.
Yeah.
But if you look at the history of Test cricket, their actual path is it's really hard to be good consistently in Test cricket. The other issue was that Bangladesh did maybe the stupidest thing in the history of Test cricket, in that for about 10 years they played with a bunch of players who struggled but understood Test cricket and traveled around the world and were getting better and were becoming professionals. And because they didn't have any success, they asked all of them and they started again with kids. So all of that institutional knowledge that those guys had, you might look at Habibul Bashir and go, they only averaged, 34. It's like, yeah, but he knew how to be a professional. He knew how to travel around the world. He understood all of these different things. So Bangladesh kind of threw away the start of their Test career and restarts it again. So you have to, when you start to really look into these sorts of things, and, I'm not expecting all of you to know that New Zealand took 39 years to win a Test series and 49 years to win their second, right? I'm not expecting anyone to know those sorts of things. But you have to understand that it's very hard. I had this conversation with a scientist years ago, where he said to me, China will be in the best three Test-playing nations within 5 years once they start playing cricket. And I was like, they won't. And he was like, you have to understand that when they throw their weight into... And I was like, no, I understand the financial stuff. I understand everything you're saying from that perspective. But what you don't know in Test cricket is all the little shibboleths that you can't learn and that no coach can teach you in 3 to 5 years. So I was watching Afghanistan at the 2015 World Cup, and they were teaching their bowlers, Andy Moles, and I can't remember who the other coaches were teaching their bowlers how to bowl cross seam. Right? Megha, I learned how to bowl cross seam when I was 12, right? Not because I'm a genius, but because I grew up in a cricket culture, right? Suddenly a coach said to me one day, you're bowling, I was bowling medium pace one day because we had no medium paces. And a coach just said to me, bowl cross seam. This wicket will help on cross seam. I didn't even know what he meant, but I bowled it and a ball step up and a guy pulled it straight up in the air and I got a wicket. And I was like, oh my God, this is a genius ball. Never got another wicket bowling cross seam in my life. But these are Afghan cricketers who were 30, 35, 25 professionals who didn't know about this. The knowledge that you need to be able to get to be at that level. right? And Bangladesh weren't really pushed as a cricket nation as much as they should have been when they were part of it, when they were East Pakistan and everything else. These things take time, right? We don't know if they'll ever be a great team, right? Like Sri Lanka might never win a World Test Championship. It takes a long time to be good at this. But what we have seen with Bangladesh over the last couple of years is flutters that things are going in the right direction. Finding fast bowlers. Finding a wrist spinner. We haven't even talked about the fact they've got a wrist spinner. Like, I thought it was against the law to bowl wrist spin in Bangladesh until a year ago.
But then you talked about that China story and how that scientists thought that China could turn out to be a good or a great cricketing nation in tests. What were his reasons? Just the financial might, or was there more to it, genetics? Or?
Yeah, financial might, coaching, and everything else. Like, I understood his general principle because I follow multiple sports, but I also know that China put a lot of money into basketball and have one of the best basketballers in the world, and they're not, Serbia and Serbia, France, Australia, Canada don't put anywhere near as much money into their basketball.
Yeah.
And men's and women's. Like, I think did French get the silver in both of the Olympic things? I think America won the gold and France got silver. Australia had a decent side. Like, there were lots of decent sorts of teams. South Sudan came from nowhere and were really good in this last Olympics as well. So what are we actually talking about here? Like, China can put a lot of money in and get a lot of success, and we only have to watch the Olympics to see that. But they're not always the number one ranked Olympics team. They don't always win the most gold medals, right? Yeah. And the problem with some of this is that a lot of these sports have these little shibboleths, right? And by shibboleth, what I mean is, I think it's a Jewish word, but it basically means a passed on thing that you don't even know that you know until someone asks you about it, right?
Yeah.
And cricket is right up there with the sport that has the most of those. Just little tiny things that you don't even realize that are really, really important. And little things that you pick up from time over years of having coaches, over generations of having coaches, right? That are really, really important. It's why one of these things of, like, we can all say that West Indies cricket is going to die, right? And people have been saying that for generations. But they keep producing really good cricketers because there is a cricket culture in the West Indies, right? And so if you're a good young cricketer in the West Indies, you're more likely to play for England now than you are for the West Indies, right? You're more likely to be a franchise player. But chances are there's some old bugger who maybe coaches Roddy Eswick. This is such a tangent here, but Roddy Eswick was a high school teacher, right? Imagine being in Barbados and going to high school and, like, having your high school teacher come over with a first-class bowling average of 20 who goes on to be the assistant coach of the West Indies. Like,
I wouldn't be complaining if I had such a teacher. So
it'd be awesome, right? We would all, we would have loved that. And so when you live in a culture that has that, right, you learn things that you can't anywhere else.